Gavin Stone trending up. Luis Heel trending down. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on a Thursday, June 27th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have buy or sell. I have 6 players that I want to ask about. We had a pair of prospect debuts, waiver wire moves, and much more. Just a heads up, no rankings, risers, and fallers today or any Wednesday night, Thursday morning podcast moving forward because we're moving that one day later. Thursday's a lighter slate. It's easier for us to kind of let that breathe and have more fun with it. And, we don't have to rush through it. So that'll be on Thursday nights moving forward.
You're kind of over-promising there, Frank.
Why?
You said never again will it happen on a Thursday. I think it might happen on a Thursday at some point.
Never again.
Never again.
We're moving it for now, I guess is how I should phrase that. Rankings tomorrow. We'll get into all that. But let's jump in.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
All right, players of the night, and we will start with Scott White, who's wearing an Astro shirt, by the way. I got to get this off my chest. I've been giving Scott a lot of crap before we started here because
I know.
What you betrayed me. You betrayed me.
I didn't.
Well,
I
Frank,
didn't know you were such an Astros hater.
Frank, are you wearing a Yankees shirt?
No, this is a wrestling shirt.
Okay, I was hoping we were all wearing shirts of our favorite teams.
Oh, Scott's jumping ship.
Yeah.
No, not quite. But I do. It's an Astros Space City shirt. When it's actually a Jose Altuve jersey. I like the futuristic lettering on the back, and I've always been a big Jose Altuve fan. So yeah, snatched that one up. Did not think it would move Frank Stampfl to tears, but that's fine. That's fine.
All right, who's your player?
Anywho, you won't ever catch me wearing a Yankee shirt, that's for sure. Anywho, Gavin Stone was really good. He was really good here on Wednesday. He threw a complete game shutout, 7 strikeouts, no walks. It was against the White Sox. We should probably state that up front. Far and away the worst offense in baseball. But, Gavin Stone has been pitching well. Last 11 starts, he has a 1.90 ERA, a 0.96 whip. But his strikeout rate during that time is only 6.8. For the season, it's 7.1. So he's not succeeding in the way we normally like pitchers to succeed. I have pointed out during this stretch of dominance that he has been mixing in a slider more. Mm-hmm. He's not so changeup dependent anymore, and his swinging strike rate is like 12%. It's pretty good for the year. That is, it's pretty good considering he has only a 7.1 K per 9. So I think overall Gavin Stone is trending up. I think he's a talented pitcher on a really good team that generally knows how to develop players and probably has a pretty bright future. Is he overperforming? Yeah, he's overperforming.
Of course he is. Anytime a pitcher has a sub-2 ERA, they are overperforming.
Yeah. And
except for maybe Jacob deGrom.
It's a year full of pitchers overperforming. And so I guess Gavin Stone needs to be treated much like them, much like the Reynaldo Lopez's and the Seth Lugos, and I guess to a certain extent even Ranger Suarez. Though I have a little more confidence in him at this point than those others. I have Gavin Stone 74th in my rest of season rankings. We all have him outside the top 70. And it certainly feels low based on the numbers I just listed off. I will point out that in that same range are pitchers like Jake Irvin, Eric Fetty. Let's see, Brandon Pfaadt and Reese Olson.
I'd rather have Gavin Stone than Brandon Pfaadt for sure.
Yeah, I guess I could probably move him up that far at least. But you go much higher than that. I got Yusei Kikuchi 63rd, Nestor Cortez 61st, Hunter Brown 60th. It's as we've been saying all year. Even if a pitcher's pitching really well and we think he's pretty good, and I'm only willing to go as far as pretty good for Gavin Stone, the the depth at starting pitcher only allows for so high of a ranking. So maybe I can get him inside the top 65 rather than the top 75, but I don't know that I can go much higher than that.
Yeah, and look, the thing to keep in mind, and I feel like this goes for, I don't know, we talk about like 3 pitchers every night who have like a 2-something ERA that we don't believe in. And there's always comments that are like, yeah, but they keep doing it. And it's like, yes, that is true. And maybe they will continue to do it. But I think the thing you have to keep in mind is, and I say this a lot, ERA is just not a very meaningful stat. Now, what I mean by that is I understand you may be yelling at your podcast device, probably your phone, saying ERA is one of the 5 categories in Roto. And it's important for points because you lose points for runs allowed, but it's not quite as specifically important, but it's important. We all agree. ERA is arguably the most important stat for pitcher value in fantasy baseball. But from a predictive standpoint, ERA is kind of meaningless. I wrote about this for CBSSports.com. You can go check it out. I looked at the last 5 years of data, looked at all pitchers who qualified for the ERA title in the first half of the season, compared their results to all the what they did in the second half. And the first thing that jumps out is like 43% of pitchers who qualify for the ERA title in the first half of the season don't in the second half because pitching is bad for your body and they get hurt. The other thing that jumps out is that the R squared, which is the correlation, it's a mathematical term that I don't quite understand, but it just generally means the relationship between one number to another number in the same data set. It runs from 0.0 to 1. 1 being a perfect relationship. First half ERA would explain second half ERA perfectly. The R squared for ERA from the first half to the second half is 0.06. There is basically no predictive relationship between first half ERA and second half ERA. That also holds true full season versus the next season, etc. Which is all to say that Gavin Stone does have a sub-2 ERA over his last 11 starts, and that's really valuable and that's really good. It does not mean he is likely to have a sub-2 or even sub-3 ERA moving forward. The skill set that Gavin Stone has, not many strikeouts, good, but not Kyle Hendricks control, and good, but again, not necessarily elite quality of contact suppression. You add it all up. He had a 3.75 xERA entering this start. He actually gave up 23 balls in play with a 91.2 mile per hour average exit velocity on Wednesday. And White Sox hitters went 2 for 6 on batted balls with an XBA of over 500. You can do the math there. You would expect at least 3 out of 6, probably higher, which is all to say that Gavin Stone's ERA probably should be more like 3.75.
Okay, so...
But he could still be a must-start pitcher if he has a 3.75 ERA on the Dodgers.
Probably not quite must-start, but still rosterable, certainly. I love the analysis, but it begs the question for me. Okay, if the correlation between first half ERA and second half ERA is basically non-existent, what from the first half would correlate well to second half ERA?
So this is the the correlation between xFIP and ERA is stronger, but it's like over the last 5 seasons, it's like 0.16, I think. So it's like twice as predictive as ERA, but still there's just the bigger thing is that when you're talking about pitching, it's just everything is noisy, especially ERA. There's just so much that can change from one start to the next, from 1 month to the next, et cetera, that unless you have a really long and large sample size, you probably should just assume you don't know very much about what pitchers will do moving forward.
I do find it a little odd, and maybe xFIP isn't the one to use, but I don't feel like we're, generally speaking, bad at predicting who's a good pitcher and who's a bad pitcher. Yeah, I mean, there are surprises on both ends of the spectrum. There will always be because nobody can actually predict the future. But I don't think we are so bad at it as to not even try, which is what those correlation numbers are suggesting.
It's just I think the bigger thing is we know skill sets that are good, and we know skill sets that correlate to low ERAs. The thing that's the real takeaway is just that ERA is just super, super, super noisy.
It's just we're overemphasizing ERA is what you're saying.
It's hard because you have to. It's the most important stat for pitchers.
It's just that it's not predictive. It's not that we shouldn't use it or it doesn't matter for fantasy. It's just that, and we go back to this example every time. Bryce Elder in the first half last year was very different from Bryce Elder down the stretch last year. Just because someone has a good ERA in the first half doesn't mean they're going to have a good ERA in the second half. And
I believe
we use a bunch of different things. I wish there was just an all-encompassing predictive stat that we can use to try and predict second half ERA. But we know what to look at, or at least we think we do. Swinging strike rate and xERA and Sierra, and it's just we look at all of those things to try and decipher. Okay, is this pitcher overperforming, underperforming, or is he just right?
Yeah, and when we get feedback on our pitcher analysis, it pretty much always like they're just looking at ERA, or they're not looking at ERA, but they're saying this guy hasn't scored as many fantasy points as you make it sound like he should have. And I go and look, and it's just because he has an upside down win-loss record, which win-loss record would be even less predictive than ERA. I would think. Yeah. So yeah, it's just a matter of paying attention to the wrong. So it's a very, very circular way of saying here that we are better at analyzing pitchers than you are with your overemphasis on ERA and win. So thanks for that, Chris. Thanks.
And that is our 10-minute discussion on Gavin Stone. But no,
but look, it's not just Gavin Stone, right? It's Seth Lugo, who pitched really well yesterday, and it's what Ranger Suarez, like you mentioned, who we all think is good, but it's not, are these pitchers good? It is what they're doing sustainable and predictable moving forward. And that's with Gavin Stone in particular. I think he is a good pitcher who will be useful for fantasy. I've moved him inside my top 60, but he's a good pitcher if he has a 3.6 ERA too, Yes.
And I think it's a good discussion to have because people have asked those questions and, what types of things they should look at for pitchers and what is the most predictive. And I think as a community, we're still kind of figuring that out. But yes, it's a good discussion to have. Chris, over to you, player of the night.
Gosh, we've gone so long that I forgot. Spencer Arrighetti.
We basically analyzed every pitcher for the second half. So.
Yeah, we can kind of move on to just talking about hitters now, finally.
Yeah, basically.
No, Spencer Arrighetti, who had a 10 strikeout, 0 walk performance, which is a pretty remarkable showing against the Rockies away from Coors Field. We mentioned him as a potential streamer. Worked out really well if you took that advice, but I can't say I was super optimistic about Spencer Arrighetti's chances of doing this. And it just goes to show you that sometimes talented pitchers who aren't fully developed yet, and I think that's what Spencer Arrighetti is, can look absolutely brilliant in the right matchups. I don't necessarily think this is something we should expect moving forward. However, Spencer Arrighetti's 2 best pitches by far this season have been his sweeper and his curveball. And he did throw those second and third most, which has not necessarily been the case for him all of the time this season. So that's a good sign. His fastball velocity was up 1.2 miles per hour. That's also a good sign. So I think Arrighetti is someone who has had a couple of flashes, but on the whole has been pretty terrible this season. And maybe if he starts stacking a couple of starts like this, we can start to talk about him as someone who's more than just a streamer against the very best matchups. That being said, guys like, I had a list of other pitchers who have had 10 strikeout performances with 0 walks. Dane Dunning, DJ Hertz, Casey Mize, Chris Paddock have all had 10 strikeout, 0 walk performances this season and are all very much fringe fantasy options. I think Spencer Arrighetti is a fringe fantasy option, but It was a really good start, and it's something to keep an eye on moving forward.
I think there could be a pitcher there. I think what's most notable is the control has been a mess this year for Arrighetti, and he did not walk anyone in this start. He threw 79% of his pitches for strikes. It was actually his first start with less than 2 walks this season. Every other start, it's been 2, 3, 4 walks consistently. So that's been a problem, and I thought it was very encouraging here. I think there could be a pitcher, but we need to see more and develop that confidence in Arrighetti before offering up as a waiver wire ad. Scott, do you agree?
Yeah, I have no interest in Arrighetti right now. I mean, his previous 2 starts were horrible, and there have been some signs that maybe he does have something to work with, as you said, Frank. But I'm a long way from being interested in him for fantasy purposes.
All right, let's quickly take our first break, and when we return, my player of the night, someone who let us down, Luis Gil. We'll talk about it right after this.
Football action continues. Are you ready for this? Ready to take chances? As the gridiron is taken over by the Great White North. It's time to storm the fortress. It's time to fight on the battlefield. Catch the Canadian Football League on CBS Sports Network.
Shout out to the Mets. They crushed my Yankees. They took the first leg of the Subway Series, sweeping both games. I saw this tweet from Jeff Passan. The Mets have won 15 of their last 19 games with a plus 52 run differential, and they are now 1.5 games out of the final wild card spot. Why does that matter? Because they did a lot of that damage against Luis Gil, who has struggled 2 starts in a row now. Here on Wednesday, it was 4 1/3 innings, 5 runs allowed, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts, only had 6 whiffs on 87 pitches. His last 2 starts total, 5 2/3 innings, 12 earned runs, 6 walks, 3 hit by pitches to just 3 strikeouts. So the control has been all over the place. The inability to throw strikes here. And I think it's a good reminder that he is a rookie. And, we're approaching a territory in terms of innings that, we haven't really seen with Luis Gil. So, Scott, I will throw it your way. This was one of our buy or sells for later. Did we get duped by Luis Gil?
Well, it depends who you mean by we, and it depends what you mean by duped. So I don't know exactly how to answer that, but
semantics, Scott. Come on. Did we get duped by Luis Gil or what?
I mean, I think Luis Gil has a lot of upside. I think he has a long-standing history of struggling to throw strikes, and it's reared its ugly head here in his last 3 starts. He's thrown only 56% of his pitches for strikes in his last 3 starts, which is horrible. Like, it doesn't matter how good your stuff is. If you're throwing strikes at such a low rate, you're not going to have success. In his 8 starts prior to that, he threw 63% of his pitches for strikes, which still isn't great, but it's a testament to how good his stuff is that he was amazing throwing 63% of his pitches for strikes. Is he throwing fewer strikes now because he's getting run down over the course of the season, which we have been acknowledging is a possibility, and it is a possibility. But there's absolutely no way to conclude that that's absolutely what's happening. It may just be that he, with his long-standing history of control problems, is encountering more control problems. And I have a little more hope for him overcoming it now than when he was having these control issues in April, because we have seen him overcome it for a span of 2 months at a time. There's a lot of talent here. He has good stuff. But, he's a rookie, and the innings are piling up, and we'll see. We'll see what happens next. That's all it's not a great time to trade him, obviously, but we'll see.
This is why Gil was one of the toughest types of breakouts to analyze and for me buy into, because it wasn't like, oh, he's throwing harder or he added a new pitch. It was literally just he had this gigantic flaw, and then he no longer had that flaw overnight, right? Because he had 19 walks and 24 2/3 innings in the month of April. And then he had a 2-walk start on April 26th. He had 12 walks and 38 innings in May. And then the last three starts, and really he had one poor-ish control start early on in June. So then you can just say June overall, 14 walks and 22 and a third innings. And so was May real? Did he just get hot? Was he just locked? Like, I tended to be a little more skeptical of it. There are also innings concerns moving forward. That's something that the Yankees have talked about. Very similar situation to Garrett Crochet, where he just has not thrown a lot of innings. And so, yeah, I think you might have missed your sell window. And that's not to say that Luis Gil is just going to turn into a pumpkin moving forward. But I think the idea that Luis Gil was just an ace moving forward, I never bought into that. And I don't see how you could after the last couple of starts.
I think the main thing I can say with confidence Luis Gil is uniquely good at is hit prevention. We have a large enough sample of him doing that with, the fly ball tendencies, the bat missing ability. It's kind of like when Christian Javier was at his peak. It's kind of the same strengths and weaknesses. Obviously, Christian Javier fell off for all kinds of reasons. But if we think of peak Christian Javier when he was first turning into a fantasy asset, it's a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses here for Luis Gil.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair comparison. And Luis Gil, by the way, last point here, his innings are now up to 85 2/3 on the season. He has thrown a total of 29 2/3 the previous 2 years entering this season. So less than 30 innings. He's about to triple that so far this season. I still think it's a possibility he gets shut down or moved to the bullpen at some point in the second half. But yes, 2 rough outings in a row here for Luis Gil. Quick reminder to sign up for the FBT newsletter if you haven't already. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan that QR code and that will take you right to the website where you click on the FBT logo, you punch in your email address, and it's easy as that. You'll get an FBT newsletter delivered right to your inbox for free every single weekday. Let's talk news and notes. And we got this report late last night, and it's interesting to transition from Luis Gil to Garrett Crochet. I kind of feel like they're so tied together in terms of how we're analyzing them this season. But White Sox manager Pedro Grifol said that said this of Garrett Crochet, quote, "We're going to start dwindling his workload down a little bit." And then he added, "It's not something we're going to put out and say, hey, this is what we're doing, because nothing in this game is black and white. He might have 5 innings where he goes 12 pitches or less, and we might let him go 6 or 7 innings. Even when we're trying to minimize his workload, it all depends on what he does," he being Garrett Crochet. So this is not surprising. It's something we've talked about as a possibility all season long. The question is there anything that we can do from a fantasy perspective? Is there anything actionable here with Garrett Crochet?
Well, I mean, you could consider trading him if they look at the latest news on him when they have that offer in their inbox. They're probably going to overreact to it and want to buy him for nickels on the dollar, and you don't want to sell him for nickels on the dollar. I will stress a little bit on Pedro Grifol's comment, and he acknowledges in it that there will still be times when he goes 6 and 7 innings. So will there be more 5-inning starts than we were seeing before? Yeah, probably. And that's not great, but he's going to be so dominant over those 5-inning stretches that I think you're still going to like having him around. I would say it's going to hurt more in points leagues, head-to-head points leagues, because fewer quality starts and fewer wins. But those are also the leagues where you get the advantage of starting him a relief pitcher. So, if we thought Garrett Crochet's workload would be unlimited the rest of the way, we'd probably have him as a top 10 pitcher right now. I'm not inclined, I guess, to downgrade him in my rankings, at least not significantly based on this news.
But if you could still sell him for his full value, it's something you would.
Of course, it's something to consider. Yeah, if you could. I'm skeptical that you could, but if you could, sure. His value, like we have him in the rankings,
which for me is 25. I assume it's similar for you guys. The thing that I expect is like what we saw in his most recent start, where I think he got to the 6th inning. He was cruising. I think he only threw 91 pitches total, but he ran into a little trouble, and they're probably just going to have a real quick hook with him once he hits like 80 pitches. It's like he's going to throw 80 pitches. And if it takes him 4 innings to get through 80 pitches, that's probably all he's going to throw. If he gets through 80 with 5 innings and he's cruising, he's going to start the 6th. If he runs into trouble, they're probably going to have a real quick hook. So I don't think it's like they're going to shut him down or move him to the bullpen. But yeah, I think 6 inning starts will probably be few and far between. But in terms of talent level, I actually believe in Garrett Crochet more than I believe in Luis Heel, personally. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too.
the Yankees have been less upfront about what their plans are for limiting Heel lately, but they talked openly about it early in the season. And I would guess the Clark Schmidt injury probably just changed the timeline, right? Like if Clark Schmidt was healthy, we might be seeing more discussions of Luis Heel being limited. And so if he's back in 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have those discussions again.
Zach Gallen threw 67 pitches in a simulated game Monday and will next have a bullpen session on Thursday. Max Scherzer said on Monday that he was removed after 5 innings in his season debut due to thumb soreness. A thumb injury is one of the injuries he was rehabbing on his way back. And despite this, he is still expected to make his next start Friday in Baltimore. Xander Bogaerts took batting practice on field Wednesday. He's on the IL with a broken left shoulder and could return at some point in late July. Justin Verlander hasn't resumed playing catch and will not accompany the Astros to New York this weekend. Josh Young said on Wednesday that he expects to resume swinging a bat in a few days. He's now dealing with inflammation in that surgically repaired wrist. Brewers GM Matt Arnold said Devin Williams could return from the 60-day IL sooner than the initial mid to late July timeline. And I did want to quickly find out what his roster percentage is, because now is probably the time to stash Devin Williams if you could. 60%. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think he should be stashed pretty much anywhere that you're stashing anyone on the IL,
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, he might be the top closer in baseball from the time he returns to the end of the season. I think I would bet on him being top 5 during that span.
Yeah, I agree with that. Nolan Arenado returned to the lineup after missing 2 games with a left forearm injury. Joey Ortiz was removed due to a neck injury. Jeimer Candelario was out of the lineup due to hamstring tendonitis. Apparently, he's been nursing the issue for more than a week and is considered day-to-day. The Reds announced that Noelvi Marte has rejoined the team after completing his rehab assignment with AAA, and it sounds like he could be in the lineup Thursday when he's first eligible. 61% rostered for Marte, who had a rough rehab assignment, basically his spring training, re-upping his spring training. Do you think Marte needs to be more than 61% rostered right now?
I don't think he needs to be much more rostered than 61%. I just wrote about him for the prospects report that's going to be on the site Thursday. So to give you the specific numbers, he went 8 for 53 in 12 games. That's a 151 batting average. He went 1 for 22 in his final 5 games at AAA. Manager David Bell said that they get process grades for the at-bats. So they're not just looking at the results, they're looking at the process, and those have been right on track. They're satisfied with the way Noelvi Marte's looked. And so, maybe it'll go fine. Maybe he just, like you said, it's a spring training and things will click pretty quickly. But I think given the way things have played out this year for young hitters, the difficult time they've had keeping their head above water in the majors, like you don't want to put someone in your lineup right away who hasn't even come up for air yet, much less keeping his head above water, Yeah. So a lot of upside for Noelvi Marte. Leagues where you roster more hitters like Roto, sure. Leagues where James Wood is rostered, Noelvi Marte should be rostered. But even though he's being activated Thursday, I still view him as more of a stash than somebody you can count on in fantasy.
I will say, I do expect him to play more or less every day.
Oh, he'll play. It's just, will he be?
Well, but there was some concern
good
about that early in the season.
But now,
they've been playing Santiago Espinal.
Things were going to play out normally for offense.
Yeah,
sure, he's an unproven player. He was great last 6 weeks of last season, but now again, it's been a punishing environment for young hitters, especially. And we're not sure he even has his timing down because he was so bad at AAA. So I think you got to wait to use Noel V. Marte. But
Yeah,
I'm sure the Reds will use him a lot.
I would say any categories league, probably not all head-to-head points leagues, is where I would say Noel V. Marte should be rostered. And that might just be pretty close to where he's at already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Noel V. Marte, 25% rostered on Yahoo. I know those are typically head-to-head categories, shallower lineups.
Shallower, yeah, but
but it probably should be higher than 25% there, I think. Lars Nootbaar could begin a rehab assignment as soon as this weekend. He's been out since late May with a strained left oblique. Spencer Turnbull was removed from his start after just 3 innings due to a sore right shoulder. Apparently, he felt a little grab in that right shoulder, but isn't especially concerned about the injury. Gary Sanchez was placed in the IL with a left calf strain. And one prospect update, the Twins will promote pitching prospect David Festa to make his major league debut Thursday in Arizona. Chris Paddock was placed in the IL earlier this week, so that created an opening in the rotation. Chris and I had the chance to talk about Festa on yesterday's podcast, so Scott, a quick opinion on David Festa. He's 12% rostered. Is this somebody you're interested in for fantasy? Would you be looking to add him in deeper leagues? Your thoughts?
I mean, deeper leagues where we were adding like DJ Hers and Cade Povich, sure. I think David Festa is about on that level. Impressive strikeout numbers in the minors. I've frequently come close to writing about him in the prospects report, but just the number of base runners he allows between the walks and the hits always steered me away and towards somebody else. When you're getting strikeouts, you're doing something right. And so I think there's upside to consider with David Festa, and it wouldn't be the most shocking thing ever if he had success, particularly in an environment that favors pitching right now. But I don't think he's a priority add until we see him have some of that success.
Let's take our final break. When we return, buy or sell right after this.
An unsub, a seasoned one. And he's leaving a calling card.
How do we find a ghost? I have a plan.
Let's play a little buy or sell. And this isn't just, hey, I'll present a player. Are you buying him? Are you selling him? I'll give you guys a statement, and you tell me if you're buying or selling that statement. Gavin Stone, we talked about earlier. Just quickly get this out of the way. I had it as a top 50 starting pitcher rest of season. Do you buy?
I undermined that by saying I could get him in my top 65. So I guess I'm selling that.
Yeah, I moved him up, but he's still outside of the top 50. It's hard without the strikeouts to get up there.
Luis Heel. Scott didn't want to answer it, but we got duped. Did we get duped? Buy or sell? Are you buying that?
Well, I still don't know exactly what you mean because we've always been very measured in our analysis. So I'm going to say no. We did not get duped.
All right, he's selling.
Sell it.
Some of us did. Not like us three, the royal us. I think it's
confusing.
There were people who thought he
more.
was an ace, and he's probably not that.
All right,
he may still be the Yankees ace.
You missed your window to sell high.
Buy.
You buy this.
I'm going to sell. I think Luis Heel will go on another run that gives you another chance to do that.
All right, let's talk about George Kirby, who turned in a strong start at the Rays. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts, 13 whiffs on 87 pitches, and over his last 6 starts, a 1.70 ERA, a .86 whip, 39 strikeouts over 37 innings. He's been mixing in that slider more. Buy or sell. Kirby will be the best Mariners pitcher rest of season.
I have Logan Gilbert ranked higher, so I guess I have to sell.
It's just extremely funny that if we asked this 3 starts ago, there's no way anyone says buy, right? Like it's 100% Luis Castillo, and then he's had a couple of poor starts.
Oh, I forgot. I didn't even think about Luis Castillo.
Yeah,
but yes, I have them both ahead of George Kirby.
I have really close ranking those 3 starters.
I have those 3 all as top 15 starters. I have Gilbert 1 spot behind Kirby. I have Castillo a couple spots ahead of both. They're all awesome. I'll sell because there are 2 other guys that I think it could be.
Mm-hmm. Any analysis or anything you'd like to add on Kirby before we move on?
He's good. I still wish there were more strikeouts.
We got through that so quickly, Frank, and you want us to drag it out more.
I know. I just like, the Kirby fans out there might have been like, oh, well, you breathe past George Kirby.
He's no Donkey Kong, okay?
I kind of think he is what he is. And what he is just south of ace level as a starting pitcher for fantasy. But I also think Luis Castillo and Logan Gilbert are just below ace level for fantasy. So it's not a knock on him. He's really good.
Yeah. Kirby, great video game, by the way. I do agree, Scott. Donkey Kong, better.
I loved playing as Kirby and Smash Brothers, just sucking someone in and then jumping off the ledge. You both die, but it's annoying for the person you did it to.
See, I was going to bring that up because I've been playing a lot of the original Smash Brothers with my kids lately. Donkey Kong is my favorite character to be. And I could probably go 5 over Kirby. 5 different. I could have.
Oh yeah, no. I only want to be Kirby so I can troll people by sucking them in.
No,
and
a lot
then
of people
jumping
think
off
Kirby's
the
the best. Apparently, I've been reading it up on it online. But and you know, Donkey Kong has his flaws, but I just think I like having a character with big power moves. You know,
you can't trust those tier lists, Scott. It's all subjective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've gotten familiar with all of them because you had to unlock the characters, which took way too much time. For
the amount of time that I spent in my life playing Kirby Superstar for Super Nintendo, that Megaton Punch game where you try to crack the earth is an ungodly amount of time. I don't know if anyone here has played it, but it is so fun. And I highly recommend it. Let's talk about Jackson Chourio. He has been hitting better as of late, 2 for 4 with an inside the park home run, his 8th homer of the season. Last 20 games, he's batting .311 with 3 homers, 11 runs, 13 RBI, 1 steal. Strikeout rate is down, still way too many ground balls, but average exit velocity slowly climbing. Buy or sell, Chourio is starting to turn the corner and will matter for fantasy in the second half.
Absolutely buying. I definitely think Jackson Chourio will matter for fantasy.
What does that mean? What does matter mean? He already matters in deep 5 outfielder leagues.
Right.
I
must start outfielder. He must start. That is matter. Let's say
I'm gonna sell his. So the numbers I pulled up on Jackson Chourio. I always go to reference them and then I can't pick his name out of my mini notes here. Okay, Jackson Chourio. In June, .302 batting average, 3 home runs, 1 steal, 840 OPS. It's good, I guess, if you can trust his hottest stretch of the season to be what he does the rest of season, then I guess we could take that. You know, that's probably pretty close to a 20 homer pace and a 10 steal pace and a solid batting average and all of that. And his strikeout rate is 20% and his average exit velocity 89.4 during the month of June. So that's up 1 mile per hour from the rest of the season. It's still not a lot of power. It's still not a lot of speed. And this is his hottest stretch of the season. And I just, I think he'll be good next year, but I'm going to sell Jackson Chourio being good, being somebody people care about even in 3 outfielder leagues. I'm going to sell that in the second half.
Okay. I am buying it. 78% rostered. I think if you have just someone on your bench that doesn't really matter or just a slumping hitter, someone you could just cut bait with, I would try and stash Jackson Chourio now just in case we get one of these crazy blow up second halves we saw from like Gunnar Henderson or Julio Rodriguez in years past.
I'll note also that those 3 home runs I'm referring to includes this inside the Parker, which was a soft single to center, basically, that the center fielder dove for. So it doesn't even really count.
His average launch angle,
but it's not predictive.
His average launch angle in June is down to 2 degrees, which is even lower than it was before. So, yeah, he's hit. And look, given his profile, it might not be a bad idea right now to hit more ground balls, be more of a slap hitter, and then grow into the power. But yeah, I don't think the upside is incredibly high without improvement. But I think we're seeing signs of improvement. He's hitting the ball harder, like Scott said. Strikeout rate's down below 20% since the start of May. And the chances that he does figure it out, like Frank said, are worth betting on.
Let's talk about Carlos Correa, who continued his hot month on Wednesday. 3 for 4 with a double RBI, 2 runs scored. In June, he's batting .382, 4 homers, 17 runs, 18 RBI, a .986 OPS. Buy or sell? Carlos Correa will be better than Bo Bichette this season.
Oh, that's fun.
Here's a list of 3 shortstops I moved Carlos Correa ahead of in my rankings just today. Bo Bichette, So buy. Bryson Stott, moved him ahead of him. And Anthony Volpe. I'm in Carlos Correa, top 12 shortstop the rest of the season. His underlying numbers are all terrific. Actually, almost as good as his top line numbers. He's driving in runs, which was the problem for him 2 years ago when he was a really good hitter and just wasn't that great for fantasy because the runs and RBI were low. That hasn't been the problem so far. So I don't see much reason to be skeptical aside from injury risk, and he's not hurt right now.
Yeah, I'm going to sell. Doesn't run, gets hurt all the time. I think he'll be worth keeping around in fantasy, but man, I was the downer on Bo Bichette coming in, and I still don't love him, but I think he's going to be top 12 rest of season, and I'm not ready to predict that for Carlos Correa.
Let's talk about Lane Thomas, who has been really good since returning from injury. He went 1 for 2 with 2 walks and 2 RBI here on Wednesday, and 29 games since returning. It's a 287 batting average, 6 homers, 24 runs, 24 RBI, and 6 steals. That is a 30-30 pace over 150 games. Buy or sell. Lane Thomas is a top 30 outfielder rest of season.
Oh, I'm not far off in my rest of season rankings. Let me double check. I have him 33rd. So in the strictest sense, I will sell. But is there a big difference between 33 and 28?
Not at all. No.
I just think you guys are really low on Lane Thomas. I was looking around the rankings, and I have him, I think, 24th or 25th.
Is there a big difference between 33 and 24 or 25?
It's a pretty big difference, Scott.
It's not.
All right, I just wanted to give him his credit. Last 28 days, Lane Thomas is a top 3 outfielder in roto and a top 4 outfielder in head-to-head points. So he's an outfielder. That's been awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's But the season didn't start 28 days ago. He had roughly half of that of his full season was pretty awful before this. So, he was
out hurt for a while. He came back. He's good now.
Right, but he was healthy to start the season and was terrible. He had a 503 OPS through his injury.
Even if you look at the full season numbers, 3.4 fantasy points per game, that is top 10.
Yeah, how is it that high?
Come on, guys. Lane Thomas, I'm telling you, moving him up. Move him up.
Really? I don't understand that. That's I guess he's on like a 105 RBI pace. That's not real.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that was our buy or sell segment. Let's talk about some prospect debuts. The Guardians promoted first baseman / outfielder Jean-Kenzy Noel. And if you're looking for him, how to spell that name, it's Johnkensy. That's the first name there, Jean-Kenzy. And he was in the lineup at first base, batting 6th. He homered in his very first at bat, which came off of Grayson Rodriguez. 106.5 exit velocity, 413 feet. Very interesting batting stance. Big power, big boy. 6'3", 250 pounds. He's 22 years old. He was crushing the minors this season as well. 6% rostered on CBS. Any enthusiasm here for Jean-Kenzy Noel?
I have a decent amount of enthusiasm for him. He hit a ball 118.4 miles per hour at AAA, which is a number topped by only 3 major leaguers this year. So we're talking big time power for Jean-Kenzy Noel. And if you watch that, just go look at the highlight of that home run he hit off Grayson Rodriguez, the sound, the part of the park it left. Big time power for Jean-Kenzy Noel. Now, the reason he hasn't been especially hyped is he's got some holes in his game here. He chases a lot. And it actually held him back in the minors the previous 2 years. He made enough strides this year that he was able to dominate AAA, but that's something major league pitchers, I would say, likely will exploit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the odds of Jean-Kenzy Noel being a big impact player in fantasy, I wouldn't consider them especially high, but there's a chance. I think there's a chance for him making like a Franmil Reyes type impact.
That's exactly
Yeah, and Reyes had a couple of really useful years in fantasy. So there are playing time issues because body-wise, he's really just a first baseman, and the Guardians already have a great one of those. But I was reading Stephen Vogt, their manager, said they liked how he looked in the outfield in spring training when they used him some there, and he's played at some of the minors. So it sounds like they're at least open to the idea of having Jean-Kinsey Noel play some outfield. So I think he'll get chances, and I think in deeper roto leagues, at least, he's worth a look.
Yeah, this is a guy who was not even a top 10 Guardians prospect coming into the season by nearly every list, but a big part of that is he's a first baseman only. He might be able to fake it in the outfield, but from everything I've read, he's not considered a good first baseman either. And so the bar as a prospect, if you can barely play first base, is incredibly high. But could he be a mid to high 700s-ish OPS bat who hits 25 homers over a full season? I think that's a reasonable possibility. It's on the higher end, but yeah, I'm interested. He should be added in certainly NEL, AL only league, but I'd say even some 15-team rotos.
Let's talk about Giants pitching prospect Hayden Birdsong, who made his major league debut, up against the Cubs. 4 2/3 innings, 3 runs allowed, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, had 9 whiffs on 97 pitches. It was a 4-pitch mix for Birdsong: 54% fastball, 22% changeup, 14% slider, 10% curve. Easy velocity, averaged 96.2 miles per hour here. Chris, what did you think of Birdsong's debut?
Yeah, so reading about Birdsong, the thing that stood out was when he was in college and early in the minors, he was getting a lot of whiffs with his fastball when he was sitting 91, 92. He averaged 96 today. He hit 98. That fastball looks like a legitimate major league weapon, and it's a 4-pitch mix. I mean, he threw the slider, changeup, curve, all at least 10% of the time. It wasn't an amazing debut. It wasn't the type of debut that should force you to run out and add him, but again, in NL only leagues, I think Hayden Birdsong should be added. It's a great park. And I think even in 15-teamers, he's worth a look if you're desperate for starting pitcher.
Scott, how would you rank Birdsong, Festa, and Christian Scott? Just pitching prospects either just called up or getting ready to be called up.
Oh, Scott clearly is at the top of the list. For the other two, I guess I'll go Birdsong over Festa just because, he looked okay in his debut here, and that's enough to inch him ahead. But I put them on about the same level as far as prospect potential goes.
Fun fact that may not be a fact, but I think I saw it. Hayden Birdsong and Hayden Wesneski pitched against each other. First time that 2 pitchers named Hayden faced off in a game. I'm 95% sure that's true.
It's definitely true that it happened. I don't know if it's the first time it's ever happened.
Well, there are only 3 major leaguers named Hayden, and one of them retired in 2010. So I'm going to say it's true. I'm going to call that one.
That's probably true. Yeah, there you go. Look at you. Good call.
I don't know why I said Birdsong. I mean, I guess when I say he looked good, the stuff looked interesting. He obviously didn't have a good performance, so I don't know. Maybe that inches Festa ahead. I don't know. I don't care about those two as much as I care about Christian Scott. Long story short.
Agree with that.
Well, somebody I'm pretty sure you do care about is Jared Kelenic. Let's talk waiver wire hitters. And a huge day for Kelenic across the doubleheader. 6 for 9 total with a homer, 4 RBI, and a steal. Last 16 games, he's batting .339 with 5 homers, 13 RBI, and 3 steals. What size league does Kelenic need to be rostered in? He's up to 61% rostered. So you could say, 12-team 3 outfielders, 12-team 5 outfielders, something deeper than that. What do you think about Kelenic?
Any 5 outfielder league.
But we're not up to 3 outfielder leagues yet. He's not a must.
Oh, definitely not a must. Could I see a scenario where I add him in a 3 outfielder league? Sure. I mean, I had him pretty high on the sleeper hitters list for this week, and so far so good as far as that goes. Yeah, I like that he's running more in the leadoff spot. All 3 of his steals have come in his I think last 3 weeks, and he's hitting for some power and obviously hitting for average too. Still striking out too much. Still struggles against sliders in particular, but.
I think he homered off a slider today, though.
Yeah, and he had a home run off a cutter, which I know isn't a slider, but it's kind of similar. The other day, becoming the first left-hander homer off Nestor Cortez this year. And, his numbers against changeups aren't so bad. Like, I think, we were talking about Jackson Chorio and your hope for him rest of season. I think I have a little more hope for Jared Kelenic, which maybe is revealing of how I feel about Jackson Chorio, because I don't rank Jared Kelenic as a top 50 outfielder rest of season. But in that leadoff spot for the Braves, I think he's going to be certainly more useful than Jackson Chorio has been so far.
How would you guys rank these corner infielders rest of season? They're all less than 60% rostered on CBS. Ryan O'Hearn, Nathaniel Lowe, and Jose Miranda. They all did something of note here on Wednesday.
I think I'd go Lowe, O'Hearn, Miranda.
Man, Lowe has been so bad, but he's the one everyday player of these three, I guess.
And he's had the best
every day. I haven't checked in a while.
Yeah, he is. And he's had the best season of them all. And probably the second.
Oh,
and
like
maybe the
in
third.
History.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he might have had the second and third best seasons among them as well.
Yeah, I guess so. Just because of the playing time. But man, the production has been so lacking so far. But Miranda's the only one of these three you can play at third base, which might put him at the top of the list in terms of usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, just in terms of all positions being equal, I'll go Lowe, Miranda, O'Hearn. Lowe, O'Hearn, Miranda.
Any interest in these outfielders? Brandon Marsh had a huge game in Detroit, 4 for 4 with his 7th home run, added 4 RBI. Matt Vierling, 2 for 4 with his 10th homer, had a huge May, but has slowed down quite a bit here in June. And Miguel Andujar keeps on hitting. It's just kind of empty. 2 for 4 with nothing else here in this game. Any interest in those outfielders? Marsh, Vierling, Andujar.
I think this was Marsh's first homer in 2 months.
He was on the IL for a while.
Yeah, he missed some time, but I think the last time he had homered was April 26th. This was a good start, or a good performance. He's had stretches where he's been useful in the past, but we know what Brandon Marsh is. He's a platoon bat who gets hot occasionally and can be useful, but not someone that I think needs to be rostered. Even 46%, like that even feels a little high.
Okay. Some names in deeper leagues. Either of these matter. Andrew McCutchen, 1 for 5 with his 11th home run. Last 38 games, pretty big sample size at this point. He's batting .282 with 8 homers, 30 runs scored, and right around an .850 OPS. Again, that's McCutchen, util only. And Kyle Higashioka, once a Yankee, always a Yankee. 3 for 4 with a double dong, 6 RBI, a massive game here filling in for Luis Campusano. And if he has a couple more of these, I wonder if we could get a little bit of a Wally Pipp situation here out in San Diego. But any interest, Scott, deeper leagues, McCutchen, Higashioka.
Yeah. I mean, McCutchen, not so much Higashioka. I don't think Luis Campusano is going to be out for long. Higashioka was cutting into his playing time anyway, but still not a question which Padres catcher I'd rather have rest of season. But McCutchen, I'm genuinely surprised he's been going that well for that long. I think his DH only status. It's interesting you said util only status, which I guess is the same thing, but it's interesting that you chose that terminology when I like DH only. Anyway, I guess that makes McCutchen easy to overlook. I mean, we were having trouble getting JD Martinez rostered in 70% of leagues. And so McCutchen's going to be a tough fit, I think, in standard 12-team leagues, but in deeper leagues, sure.
The thing that's really tough with McCutchen is, and it's actually surprising, it's the util only is what makes it tough.
You use util only too.
DH only, whatever. I think
DH only is more descriptive because util only makes it sound like he should be able to play everywhere.
It's the one, I think it's just the one league that I have him in. We use UT. And so that's in my mind. I did add him in Tout Wars because it's an OVP league. I am surprised at how much he's playing.
Oh,
yeah, me too.
Like
every day.
He has started 36 of the last 40 games for the
good
Pirates.
For your knees.
And if I'm remembering correctly, he tore his Achilles last year, right?
Partial tear.
Yeah, like that's wild how much he's playing and how well he's playing given that. But yeah, it's hard to say, yeah, this guy should be 70% rostered when there are at least 3 other U/DH only players out there, and it's already kind of hard to fit a JD Martinez into your lineup. Like I'm in one league where I've got Vlad Guerrero as my DH. There's no point in me adding Andrew McCutchen in that league, you know?
Chris, don't fall for Sky. You don't have to say DH. I just checked 3 different fantasy providers. They all use utility as the hitter you put in that spot. So
No, I understand, but they probably list that player's position as DH.
It's
right?
utility versus DH are very different terms,
Right.
in baseball.
You
You're
gotta,
thinking
you
one
gotta
is
admit.
yeah, one is David Ortiz, one is Alfredo Amezaga.
Right.
You know?
Hold on. This
Right.
whole discussion just goes out the window. I just realized Andrew McCutchen has outfield eligibility on CBS
well.
now.
Oh.
Well,
I have him in the Scott White Dynasty League. I just clicked on his name. It says outfield.
Yeah, he's
Well-
only started 2 games in the outfield, but I guess he's moved there enough that he picked it up.
That
All right.
helps.
Yeah.
There you go. 15 team, 5 outfielder leagues. Yeah. I think-
Sure.
and-
Okay, that just happened a few days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Look at that.
One where he came in as a pinch, 2 where he came in as a pinch hitter and then played the outfield.
What a loophole. My goodness. Waiver wire pitchers. It was a pretty light night on Wednesday. We spoke about Arrighetti. Any interest in these names, deeper leagues? Luis Ortiz of the Pirates, Joey Estes of the Oakland A's, and then game 2 of the doubleheader between the Cardinals and the Braves. Both Bryce Elder and Matthew Liberatore pitched well against each other. I don't know if they're going to stick around. Any of those things matter? Pretty deep league stuff.
I mean, it was interesting for both of them because I mean, Bryce Elder and Matthew Liberatore are pitchers that we've kind of written off in fantasy, right? And they both pitched great, and there were like their velocity was way up on. They made interesting pitch decisions, and velocity was up on their most effective pitches on the day, like more than a mile per hour. It was almost up 2 miles per hour for Elder on both his sinker and his 4-seamer. And then he got all the whiffs on the slider, which he threw way more than usual. And he was on a good run at AAA. His last 4 starts there, 277 ERA, 104 whip, 12.5 K per 9. And then as for Liberatore, he got 10 whiffs on his slider, which he threw more, and which was up 1.4 miles per hour. So like if that continues, maybe they could become something in fantasy. I think we're a long way from concluding that. And as you said, it's not even clear they're going to stick around. But I'm interested in seeing how the next start goes for both Bryce Elder and Matthew Liberatore. I could at least say that much.
Let's wrap up with some leftovers and quickly talk about some pitchers. Dylan Cease ended his recent slump with a dominant start against the Nationals, 7 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts. Grayson Rodriguez, a quality start up against the Guardians, 7 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts. Ryan Pepio, a bounce back start against the Mariners, 5 1/3, 1 run, 8 strikeouts. Brady Singer, a great start up against the Marlins, 7 1/3, 1 run, 5 strikeouts. Chris, anything you'd like to add on Singer, Pepio, Grayson Rodriguez, and Cease?
With Cease in particular, we noted that when he was struggling, what was weird about it was that it wasn't because of control. And that's always been the issue for him. And so the fact that he bounced back here makes me feel justified in my lack of concern there. He is a top 10 starting pitcher the rest of the way for me.
Yeah, I didn't move him down 1 spot in my rankings.
Pepio, I don't know, man. I want to buy in. I want to believe that he's good. That fastball is an elite pitch, but I don't know if the margin for error is wide enough to make him a must roster pitcher for fantasy. I think there's lots of upside there, but I think there's consistency is going to be an issue. And then Brady Singer, all that stuff we talked about ERA not being predictive is very much about Brady Singer. I just don't believe in it at all. He is a pitcher that I am perfectly content dropping even after a start like this.
And one thing that makes it easier to dismiss Brady Singer is only 3 times in his past 9 starts now has he gone even 6 innings. So how useful has he been, really? I don't know what his win-loss record is, but if he has a lot of wins, there's been a lot of luck with that. I want to mention for Ryan Pepio that the shape of his slider, so he threw his fastball more, it's his best pitch, all of that. But the shape of his slider in this one was a little bit different, more vertical, less horizontal. It may just be random variation and back to normal in his next start, but he got more whiffs with it. It was a more effective pitch for him. And so that might be a good sign for Pepio, something to pay attention to next time out.
I know rankings are tomorrow, but these 3 catchers, Cal Raleigh hit a home run, Yainer Diaz had 3 hits, having a big June, and Francisco Alvarez 3 for 3 with his 4th home run. And in 14 games since returning, he's batting .415 with a 1232 OPS. How do you guys rank Raleigh, Diaz, and Alvarez rest of season?
Raleigh, Alvarez, Diaz is how I have them ranked, but Alvarez I think has the most upside, sort of like Mark Vientos. And very encouraged by the reduction in strikeout rate this year. It's down to 21%. And this could be the big breakout. We could look back on this season and say it was the big breakout season for Alvarez. It's just obviously kind of been delayed by him missing so much time.
They are back-to-back in my rankings. Alvarez, Raleigh, Diaz for me.
Yeah, I get it.
I have them the exact opposite way, but I don't feel good about it, man. There is something about Francisco Alvarez. Just,
I mean, have you heard of the way the Mets talk about him?
Oh,
there were quotes the other day. I think there were 3 different player quotes where a player said, "I love that guy." Like that was a direct quote. Like he is like the most well-liked player in the locker room. The pitchers adore him. Like it's one of those situations where it just kind of feels like he's becoming a really complete ball player in a way that I think is going to show up in the hitting at some point as well.
And I heard this recited a few times on the broadcast. It's something we never talk about because it doesn't matter for fantasy, but the Mets win-loss record when Alvarez is in the lineup versus when he's not is hugely different this year.
Yeah.
I think they said 19-8 or 20-8 when Alvarez is in the lineup now.
I mean,
and
So now Alvarez is taking Grimace's credit. What's going on here?
No, it's always Grimace, Scott. Don't get it twisted, man. It's always all the credit to Grimace whenever we can make that happen.
All praise be to Grimace.
Let's go. Some other hitting leftovers. Ohtani became the first Dodger ever to record an RBI in 10 straight games. During that stretch, 15 hits, 8 homers, 14 runs, 17 RBI, 1 steal in 10 games. Wow.
Is he on like 140 run and 140 RBI pace right now?
65 and 61 at the end of June. You probably double those. So like 120, 130, but still, my God.
I mean, we thought the NL was safe for this first year Shohei Ohtani is in it. We thought, okay, well, the MVP,
someone else can win
MVP
MVP
award can go to somebody else, at least for this 1 year where Ohtani's not pitching, but it may not matter. He would be the first DH to win MVP if that happened, right?
In the NL.
Has it happened in the AL?
Did Ortiz ever win one?
Edgar Martinez won an MVP, didn't he?
No.
Might be then, yeah.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
Edgar Martinez won an MVP.
He hit like 350.
It's pretty good.
I'm just kind of assuming because I know David Ortiz.
Paul
and Edgar Martinez
Molitor.
did it.
No, I don't know why this gave me Paul Molitor. What's going on? Yeah. World Series most valuable player as a DH. What is happening? Why did it give me that as the answer? Google is broken.
All right, let's keep it moving. Aaron Judge became the first to 30 home runs, 2 for 2 with his 30th home run. Gunnar Henderson is unstoppable right now, 3 for 4 with his 26th homer of the season. Big game for Altuve, 2 for 5 with 2 steals and 2 RBI. Manny Machado picking things up last 11 games, 381 batting average, 2 homers, 8 runs, 8 RBI. Cedric Mullins heating back up last 16 games, batting .358 with 2 homers and 4 steals. And Willie Castro stayed hot, 2 for 4 with his 7th home run, He's up to 47 runs scored on the season. That is a really good number there for Willie Castro. Some bullpen updates for the Mariners. Andres Munoz entered the ninth with a 4-run lead. He gave up 2 walks and a hit by pitch without recording an out. He was relieved by Trent Thornton, who recorded all 3 outs for his first save. And just been a weird past month or so for Munoz. I know he's been dealing with that back injury, some ineffectiveness here and there. Could be related, obviously. But it hasn't been good for his fantasy value. For the Orioles, Craig Kimbrell walked 1 but struck out 3 for his 17th save. For the Cardinals in Game 2, Ryan Helsley gave up a hit and a walk, but picked up his 28th save, which leads all of baseball. And for the Giants, Camilo Doval gave up a hit but struck out 1 for his 14th save. To stream or not to stream on Thursday, we have David Festa, his Major League debut at the D-backs. There's Jordan Hicks against the Cubs, Trevor Rogers at the Phillies, Andrew Abbott at the Cardinals, Miles Michaelis versus the Reds.
I don't believe that this Davis Daniel is that's an OOTP created player. I have never heard of such things.
I drafted him in a draft and hold league.
I don't think I want Miles Michaelis. I think could be decent.
Yeah,
not in Cincinnati, so that helps. And Andrew Abbott, I guess, but I don't really believe his success.
Yeah, if you're forcing me to pick one, Andrew Abbott at St. Louis, just because that's the worst offense listed here. But I'm not thrilled to do it.
On Friday, some options. Mitchell Parker at the Rays, Albert Suarez versus the Rangers. Drew Thorpe is facing the Rockies in Chicago. Jameson Taillon at the at the Brewers, excuse me. Colin Ray versus the Cubs. Any of those names?
Mitchell Parker at the Rays was a sleeper pitcher for this week, so I don't mind streaming him at all.
Okay.
My second choice would probably be Drew Thorpe.
Yeah, it would be Drew Thorpe for me, and I've been pretty lukewarm on him, so don't love it. Yeah.
We just saw what Spencer Arrighetti did, so
yeah,
maybe Drew Thorpe can maybe not do exactly that, but have a good start against the Rockies. We are going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.